United Grind Society presents The Turntable, where we discuss everything relevant to hip hop. I'm your host Haiku, and today's topic is sequels in hip hop. So do they measure up? Do they hurt the brand? Are they even really necessary? All of that on The Turntable. This episode is brought to you by the New 90s Experience. It's a hip-hop tour coming to your city. If you want to cop tickets, please go to unitedgrind.com. All right, before we get started on the topic that we have today, I really want to go around and let's introduce all the panelists. So to my left, we have Seeds from E.com.
Seeds from the mighty E. Dot. Take that.
All right. And to his left, we have Vice from United Grind.
What up? Vice Press. Good, y'all.
All right. And to my right, we have Jenks from United Grind.
He said it.
All right. So let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. Today's topic is hip hop sequels, right? Hip hop sequels. So I first think that we need to define what a sequel is, right? So I thought about it long and hard, and this is kind of what I came up with. All right, a sequel to a hip hop album is either going to have to refer to a previous album, right, in some way, shape, or form. It's got to be. You know, you can't come up with an album, Vice, and then your next album be like, oh, that's a sequel. No, that's just his next album. So in some way, shape, or form, it's got to tie in the previous album. So if it does that, to me, that'd be one of the criteria for having a sequel. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, I was more or less, thinking outside of volumes because a lot of people, do volume after volume. They don't space it out. As a sequel, it seems to be a little bit more timely to me, but I mean, you can look at it either way. It's really subjective. So,
okay, all right. So let's talk about it. One of the first questions that comes up in regards to sequels is how do they measure up? Right? How do sequels measure up? So as we look at sequels, and we have a couple on the table that we can talk about, right? Mm-hmm. How do sequels measure up to the previous one?
Generally, they don't.
Okay. All right. See that you're not too shy about expressing your opinion.
Because generally, if you're making a sequel, it's because you had a classic on your hands and you're trying to recapture that classic magic.
And that's what I was saying, because when you do a volume, it's usually one after the other. Mm-hmm. So you really don't have time to kind of like get that classic status on the album.
Right, I got you.
Well, I sort of look at it like sort of how movies. I mean, there's different sequels. Right. I mean, a sequel may be already created while the original is being made, and then you have some people, like you said, who take advantage of something that's cemented in classic. In the example of, let's say, Stillmatic. Yeah. That came years after Illmatic. He was obviously trying to bring that same flavor back to the table, something that was already solidified as a classic. And then you have Jay-Z Volume 2, which I think, to go against what you said before, I think Volume 2 blew out Volume 1, personally. Jay-Z, in my lifetime, Volume 2.
Wait, Volume 1 was terrible, wasn't it? Volume
1 wasn't terrible. Volume 1
was that the one with Sunshine on it?
Well, it does have Sunshine on it.
Okay.
I mean, if you think
but it also has what? Where I'm From. It also has what else?
It has the joint with Primo. Man, what's the name?
It was that good? Huh?
You Belong to the City.
Yeah, You Belong to the City, and it also had
you talking about what you mean?
Right?
No. Who you with? Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah.
No, that was on the Sprung soundtrack.
You're right. You're right. No. Volume 1 was gonna be on my list of albums I'm supposed to like, but I didn't. So Gutter was on Volume 1.
No, look, if you go back, Volume 1 had some songs on it, but for Jay-Z at that time, it was a disappointment after Reasonable Doubt.
Well, yeah.
It was on Who You With was on Volume 1. It might have been on the Sprung soundtrack.
I was gonna say check it was,
but it was on there.
Okay,
so
that's funny.
So, all right. Well,
that's my movie too, by the way.
Sprung is.
I like
that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. All right. Well, to me, if you look at like what Dre did in 2001, or you look at, I think there's two ways to look at it, right?
Okay. Obvious. Yeah, definitely.
one is like, man, you had a classic album, right? Like Nas's Illmatic. You had a couple of albums in between the two those 2 points, and like you trying to, like you said, capture something. And maybe trying to bring attention back to like you, like okay, hey, I don't know if you like those other albums. I went pop or a little more pop than I normally did. I'm trying to bring attention back to it, and then then you have something like Blackout One, which to me is a classic.
I don't know what Blackout you talking about.
Okay, Blackout. I'm talking about Reth and Med's album.
Reth?
I said Reth
and Med.
Yeah, that's what I said. Red and Med.
I'm so glad that's on film.
Anyway,
He said Reth and Med.
yeah, Reth and Med. No.
That's a good title. Though.
Right.
No, I feel you. And what I was gonna say is that with the first example that you had given, you know, when you have like a classic to cement it, and then you go so many years, and then you try to bring it back around. Should there actually be some criteria for that? Like, should they be trying to capture the same sound? Like, should it matter? Or is it just like, I'm just going to brand this album?
Here's my question. My question is this. A lot of us have started working on albums and we'll figure out the title later. All right. So I think Raekwon is a good example of this. I think he knew that he was on something fierce when it came to Cuban Links 2. And I think he said, you know what? This is going to be Cuban Links Part 2. Like this is true.
So you said he didn't go into the project.
No,
he just realized he had something hot and was like, you know what?
This is it. This is the one.
And that's the only time we should get a number 2 behind some shit.
I agree.
To me, that's the only time.
But what rapper isn't gonna think that their next album is the shit? Like, you know what I'm saying?
If you were the creator of the first one,
somebody needs to tell.
Hold on, let me take it here.
Somebody needs to tell.
Let me take it here.
Camp, like,
my man, it's funny how things come together. Because my man he just had 2 babies. Okay.
Right.
Let's take it all the way here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You know, listen, we all got kids, right? Well, 3 of us got kids.
Okay. Parallels and shit.
So when you create another baby, or when you create a child, when you go to name them, you know in your spirit what you should name them. There's like you know what you're doing, you know what you're creating, you know what it should be.
Right.
I look at it the same way.
My wife wouldn't let me name my kid Jarrell, even though I knew he was super. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So going back to Haiku, saying he was in the middle. He was in the middle of creating this genius album, and he knew, this is what it is.
I got you.
So to answer you, Jinx, basically, if you're the creator, you should know if this is worthy because you know what all is writing on that.
But what kid do you have where you be like, you know what, this kid probably ain't gonna be shit. I'm gonna name him ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna name him Volume 1. That's what
maybe that parallel wasn't as strong as I wanted. But basically where I was coming from is just if you're the creator of the original, then you should know what is worthy. You should know, like, Jay-Z's not gonna call no shit Reasonable Doubt 2. Right. Unless that shit is Reasonable Doubt motherfucker.
Now, I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
Is that hit the table?
Yes, you hit the table, you killing my microphone. All right, so
it's like Speed is here.
I totally disagree with that.
You totally disagree?
I totally disagree with that.
Wait, how? Go.
Because to me, Blueprint 2 was good, but it wasn't as good as Blueprint 1.
Was it a double album?
Blueprint 2 was a double album.
And it could have been if he'd have made it a single album.
Well,
everybody does.
I agree, but it is what it is. I think that, the problem is this, if we're going to go back to your child analogy, he named the baby before he had the baby. He named the album before he made it. That's my theory. If how many of us would change the names of our children, right, after you see what their personality's worth, right? It's like, personality, you ain't a blah, you a this instead. You see what I'm saying? He did. So that's the difference. That's what I'm saying. Raekwon, in my mind, he started working on just music, and after he got a collection of it, he's like, oh man, this is gonna be Links 2. This is it.
I mean, if I'm being honest, Raekwon is one of the few examples that I think actually pulled it off.
That's what the next subject.
I don't think
Cuban Links 2 is as good as Cuban Links,
But I'm not mad at all that it's called Cuban Links 2 and that it came out.
But again, the reason is, one of the reasons why that happened the way that it did, if you look at the history behind that album specifically, it took years for that to come out. That was like a delay.
That
like
was a
3
magical.
year delay.
Which one? The 2?
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought it was longer than that.
It was
Yeah, 2 took a long
delayed.
time.
It was delayed though. But even after they announced it, I'm
Yeah.
talking year after
Yeah,
year
yeah,
after
yeah,
year,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was delayed.
Which
And
is why you were skeptical, because I remember
Oh, yeah, I was
telling
like,
you
no,
it was out, and you
no,
were like, nah.
no, I'd heard
and
that.
I listened to it, I'm like, dog, he
This
did
is
it.
it.
I was like, he did it. And you was like,
yeah, a song called.
I'm like, listen to it, man. Trust me.
it's ridiculous.
I just think so many of the sequels, the problem with the rap name sequels, and especially the ones that are spaced out, is that they are obvious attempts to get the fan base excited for an album and ends up letting them down. Because
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah.
I think it's just an obvious attempt. And I like how you combated my Jay-Z example by talking about Blueprint 2 and 3, which were not good albums. Especially in comparison to Blueprint 1.
Definitely.
So that-
I like,
that
I
was a
like a
great
lot of
compa-
songs on Blueprint too.
But I
overall,
will stick with my opinion that with that individual album, Reasonable Doubt, he would never try to come up with a sequel to that.
I would hope not.
I think he would.
Unless he knew. Unless it was Reasonable Doubt too.
Right.
Unless he ended his career with the
You know
album
his sequel
produced
to-
by Ski Beats,
D-
DJ
yes,
Premier,
yes.
Clark Kent, and all
So
those
yeah,
guys.
so like I said, that to me, I don't think anybody's ever done that.
Done what?
Like actually like implemented like the same team and
They've
to
been begging
rehash.
Nas to do it for years. And
We
he
was
just
talking
won't-
about that.
won't-
We
they've
actually
been
had a
beg-
conversation about that last night, and we were talking about like who would be able to pull off like $1 million album, and what would it take? One of the things was if Nas actually rehashed the whole lineup.
Yeah, I
from
think
Illmatic.
Pete Rock or
But then would that
Primo.
would Stillmatic be considered the sequel then at that point? I mean, like, what are we talking about?
I think Primo shot that down. Because people asking him like, why hadn't that happened? And he said, he's busy. He's doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Primo would
I'm
jump
sure.
on that. Primo would jump.
Oh, Primo would do it. I'm just saying, Nas has to okay all them people.
Absolutely.
I mean, is LES still making beats? You know what I'm saying? Because there's some producers on there that Q-Tip would have to come back in.
all of them
Q-Tip
are
was
still,
Q-Tip.
all of them are still available. I don't know about LES, but I know for a
Yeah,
fact
they're
all of them still
available
may
and
be
they're alive.
Large
Do it
Pro,
now.
Yeah, no, Large
Q-Tip,
Pro, yeah.
Pete Rock, all of those guys are waiting.
Right.
And I know some of them were disappointed in that last joint that Nas put out.
Which one?
What was
Kanye joint. A lot of time could be,
Okay.
and that's the whole problem.
Yeah.
When it comes to hip hop, a lot of shit that should happen and it makes sense never happens. That's the one thing I hate about it. But since we're kind of going in that direction, and like I said, or like I told you, the whole inspiration for this is, I've been kind of watching Red develop, and I know that's like one of your favorites. Develop, and he's been kind of like playing, Muddy Waters 2-track sampling and things like that. And to me, I mean, some of it sounds good, but it's in no way, it's completely different direction
Yep.
than Muddy Waters.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, like, is that a good thing? Like, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
it ain't. And Red is one of my favorite all-time, but people know, my all-time favorite MCs. It's really sad that I don't want to hear him rap no more.
you just don't want to hear him rap. Oh, okay, well, that's something different.
I just don't. I don't. Because of all the stuff I've heard since then. I've gotten real.
Hear the man rap anymore? He can't rap no more?
Have you heard him rap lately?
Man, Red be rapping, man.
Red is one of my all-time favorites, but it ain't that. You know what I'm saying? He's not in that lane anymore. It's kind of like I hate to say this. It's like when no. Like when certain artists have been on drugs and like, ooh, I used to write, to LSD, or I used to write when I was like, then they get sober.
You call him Red Eddie Kane?
I'm not calling Red Eddie Kane.
Reddy Kane? God,
Times
damn.
like
Here,
this,
that's this cat, Red. I ain't saying
Here,
this
my
shit.
perfect example is Common. When Common got sober, I started liking him less.
That's bullshit.
No, it ain't.
But
That's a whole other topic.
Was he sober when he wrote B?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, then you full of shit.
Common's
No.
been sober
B
since one
is
day.
great. B is great.
Common's
B
been sober
is
since
great.
one day.
B is great. One day is his best album.
He's been sober since one day.
He was.
He was going
there
through
was,
it.
there, yeah,
He
there
was
was
still
still
going
some,
through it,
there was
right?
still some residuals on. I think one day
some residues.
he had some residue. One day is the perfect blend of
sober and
If he could find that
and
find that
alcoholism.
mix.
Okay, well let's clarify that. Common was a drinker. When you say sober, everybody might not know that. They may think he was shooting up heroin.
No. He was a drinker. He's a heavy drinker.
So
he stopped drinking malt liquor and started rapping a lot slower. Like his speech got like a lot slower. He used to flow his words together, and when he got sober, everything kind of slowed down, which usually would be the opposite. But as far as Red goes, I feel like Red didn't grow with the times. Red still, even his punchlines are dated, and that hurts me when I hear it. Like he'll mention stuff that happened 15 years ago, and I'm like, that'd have been a dope punchline 15 years ago. It's not relevant now.
Now let me piggyback off of that and get sort of back on the sequel and the criteria. Sequels.
Right.
Because my thing is, it seems like in our discussion we're saying that we're disappointed in these sequels because we don't expect it to sound the same. A sequel, and I can only really compare it to like movies. Like if you're looking at Star Wars, the first Star Wars, and you're looking at this shit that's about to come out in December, they don't look the same. They don't sound the same.
That's true.
The special effects and everything, the way that it's put together is different. You have some elements that make it connect with the first. So my thing is with these sequels, I guess the thing to determine is what are the elements that connect the sequels to make it a sequel. And I think that what it sounds like for me listening to y'all is that production is sort of like the problem that you're having. Like the sound.
It's definitely a key proponent in it. When you talking about the elements to connect, at the bare minimum, it should be the production. And yeah, there should be growth, there should be changes, and obviously technology and everything evolves. But if you're getting like the Primo beat, from the 90s, it's still not going to be the same, Primo beat, even if he does it in, 2019. It's going to be a difference. There's going to be evolution just within that producer,
Yeah, so it's whether or not you like that growth or not, whether or not you as a listener actually respect the growth that they did. And I think that's typically what we're talking about here. When we talk about it, I mean, there's a reason why Dre 2001 was as successful as it was, right?
Was it better than The Chronic?
No, I don't think it's better than The Chronic. No, but you know what though? I was on a different page in 2001 than I was back then. So I'm listening with different ears. And so that brings us back to one of the conversations that we have. One of the questions is, how long should you take on that sequels? You run the chance of just like the Redman thing with him. It's like, man, I'm not on that page no more. Had Red come out with a sequel to Muddy Waters like right after Muddy Waters 1 came out? It didn't even have to be right after. Or maybe it was still 2-3 years later.
There was a lot of time that Muddy Waters 2 could have came out. There's a lot of time. Yeah. So I think ultimately, kind of like the cheapest route is to basically resurrect your career. If that's what you're looking to do, I think that is the biggest stretch versus while you're still popping, while you're still hot. Maybe it is 5 years later. Maybe you have went through a couple albums now. But if you say, let me get back to this, I'm saying at some point, and it's not a ploy to kind of like push you back into the the forefront, then I think you could give it a go. I think at that point people aren't going to look at it like.
So what would you say is the best case scenario? Who did the best job with it?
That was going to be my next question.
Okay. Who did the best job of making a sequel?
I think based on the conversation, it sounds like Raekwon did the best. I mean,
comparatively speaking, yeah, I think he did. That is my vote.
Or Dre.
I was going to say Dre because what Dre did in 2001 that was compared, which is even more challenging, I would even say, to Raekwon, is that his albums are basically compilation albums.
Yeah.
So what he did with The Chronic was pick the right collection of artists with the right collection of beats. He broke artists on both.
Yeah, different kinds.
You know what I'm saying? So he pulled off like in two different generations. That was the beginning of the 90s, then the beginning of the 2000s, and and on top of all of that, it was a successful sequel where he reinvented his sound. The shit doesn't sound like Chronic.
Agreed. The only thing I'll say to that, I agree with all of that. The only thing I'll say to that is Dre hadn't really taken any losses, right? So he was on a winning streak.
Yeah.
Whereas Raekwon had took a couple jabs. He had dipped, and so he was actually able to get up off the canvas and still. So that's how I compare those two. Like
Well,
Dre was
yeah,
on-
because Dre spaced out, you know what I'm saying? I mean, shit, he spaced out his 2 releases.
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And Detox never came the fuck out because of Dre. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well, can I throw this in here real quick?
Mhm.
I think that the longer you wait, the doper that sequel has to be.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that's the reason why
Yes.
Detox never came
came
out.
out.
And he knew it shouldn't have came
Yeah.
out because it wasn't at the level. If you wait
it shoulda came
15
out. Yes,
years,
yes.
he knew that he had to drop some earth
It
shattering
would have been
shit.
impossible.
It's impossible.
It would have been impossible. That's why Jay Electronica hasn't come out with his first album.
Well, I don't even know. See that? Nah.
we're not doing,
This motherfucker ain't even got a pre.
We're not doing it. We're not doing
Okay,
it.
no,
We're not doing
So if y'all want to, so here's what we'll end.
No, real quick. The sequel to Reasonable Doubt is American Gangster. But go ahead.
Okay. So, but we want to hear your opinion on
Why do
everything.
you do that?
See, I was trying to end it, y'all.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. End it.
We can talk about that later.
A sequel to this conversation, y'all hit us up online, all right? We want to know what y'all think in regards to sequels, all right? Deuces,
Like, subscribe, comment, all that shit.
please.
It's the unofficial.
That's a very
Unofficial.
opinion right there.
He got a habit of doing it. Next time, we're just going to shut
Oh, when he
you
throws
up.
shit in at the end, and just fucking